Prime Minister, thank you. You said at the top of the meeting that your vision for 3 years' time is that, in your words, I want people to feel better off. Just so we're absolutely clear, is the ambition that everybody in our society should feel better off in 3 years' time, including the poorest 40% of households?
Yes.
So you'll be aware of some quite troubling forecasts from, for example, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation that says that, in fact, having looked at all the measures that the government's announced on the table by the summer, the bottom 40% of households are not going to be better off in 3 years' time. They're actually going to be £1,200 a year worse off. So what do you think needs to change between now and the end of the Parliament so that everybody in our society is, in fact, enjoying higher living standards?
Well, we need to do a number of things. The first is we've got to get much better growth into our economy and create more wealth in the first place. And that's why we've put so much store on ensuring that we took necessary measures at the budget to deal with our inheritance. We then had a spending review which was targeted across the country. This question of making sure that if there is a thriving economy, it's a thriving economy in every part of the country and not just in some parts of the country. And it's why we've already in the spending review focused on things like the living wage, the national wage, and the minimum wage, and ensuring that wages are going up. They've gone up more in the last 10 months. They went up in the last 10 years. So that's the first part. The second part then is the poverty strategy that has to ensure that this is across the whole of society and every location, because in addition, as you all know, to the growth figures, we've had inequality variances across the country, place by place, and we have to have a laser focus on that, because whilst we want more wealth creation and the economy to thrive, and we do and we will, we can't have that as London and the South East and redistribution as a sort of one-word answer for the rest of the country. To my mind, that is fundamentally wrong.
Mr. Byrne.
The challenge that we've got, though, is that the Bank of England now forecasts that wage growth is going to slow down. Joseph Rowntree Foundation says that earnings for the bottom 40% are going to fall by £700 a year. The Office of Budget Responsibility says real household disposable income is going to fall to almost zero in a couple of years' time. Resolution Foundation says that the freeze on tax thresholds means that the real wage growth for the poorest will get obliterated. We've got council tax going up by 5%, food going up 4.5%, we've got energy bills up 10%, water bills up 26%, and Joseph Rowntree Foundation says that for those coming off fixed-term mortgages, they're going to be paying on average £1,400 a year extra by the end of this Parliament. Similarly, poor picture and outlook for renters. So we've got taxes and bills that are rising faster than wages. So the question remains, what else do you think is needed over the next year or two so that everybody is enjoying higher living standards by the time of the next election?
Well, if I just concentrate on two aspects of that. Firstly, the income side and then the cost side. On the income side, obviously, we have already pulled the lever of increasing minimum wages, which is on average of, I think, about £1,400 extra into everybody in effectively 3 million of the lowest paid, above inflation increases for standard rates of universal credit. And then on the other flip side, if you like, free childcare is coming on stream from this September across the board from 9 months through to school starting age. Free school meals are being rolled out, breakfast clubs are being rolled out, limits on what you have to pay on school uniforms, and warm homes discount is £150 per household. That's gone from 3 million to 6 million households for this winter. So I do think there are things that government has done and will continue to do. But in the end, the central focus has to be on creating more wealth and making sure that we have a growing and thriving economy.
You'll recall last time we met, Prime Minister, I asked you about the government's decision to freeze the local housing allowance. And coming back to the issue around child poverty, this is an area which is keeping many children and their families in poverty because they cannot afford the rent. The recent data from the local government association responsible for all councils shows that there's a funding gap of around £7 million over the last 5 years. This is a key area pushing many people more into poverty. So I ask you again, Prime Minister, do you think that was the right decision from a government that's ambitious on tackling child poverty?
Look, I think I defend the decisions we've made. Obviously, we head into the autumn. We will get to another budget, and there'll be a chance to look again across the board. But we certainly made the right decision first time around. I think I'd also emphasise something I touched on last time, which is, in the end, with housing, we need to build and make available more housing across the board. There simply isn't enough, and that
but
means
the starts,
price goes
Prime
up.
Minister, you may have seen are quite low. We're not building those houses quickly enough, and we will see more people and more children in poverty. We can't build our way out of this crisis. So in the interim, what more can the government do to help alleviate that poverty?
Well,
that families
as I
are
say, there'll be
facing?
a child poverty strategy which we're setting out in the autumn. We will go into the budget in the autumn as well, and alleviating poverty is a priority of mine. I do think that we need to build more, though, and we have to build more because we've had a problem for many years of not building enough social and affordable housing in this country. And until we crack that problem, we will never be able to get to the fundamental roots of the failures here. And that's why, on that issue in particular, I'm pressing the Deputy Prime Minister very hard.
Just following on from Florence's last question on local housing allowance, some 45% of households now face a shortfall between the local housing allowance they receive and the rent they pay. Some local authorities top this up, and that's costing them in aggregate £204 million. But when we did a study, the PAC did a study on this way back in January, your officials at DWP could not tell us what effect the freezing of these local housing allowances would have on increased homelessness, because there must be an effect.
Well, I hope that since then they've provided you with a letter or some further evidence. If they haven't, I shall make sure I do after this session. But in relation to homelessness, that is also an initiative led by the Deputy Prime Minister. It's one of the priorities that I've given her, and we have put a lot of money, so £950 million, into more temporary accommodation. That's money straight into local authorities, because often it's a lack of temporary accommodation that is one of the causes of the problem. And overall, we're investing £1 billion in reducing homelessness, and that involves a lot of preventative work. So there is a central focus on homelessness, quite a lot of money being put behind it, but particularly focus on this question of temporary accommodation available to local authorities.
So if I could just stick with homelessness a minute. We discovered that the cladding remediation levy was sucking up so much of developers' funds that the affordable housing starts in London last year, from a fairly low base, I accept, dropped by 90%. Yeah. That surely is not going to help either the people who are made homeless or your overall effort to reduce poverty, is it?
No, and we need to drive that up, and that's a problem we've identified and are working on. Obviously, we've got to do the necessary work on cladding. That's got to be financed, but you're absolutely right that we need to turn that number around and drive it up. And so the Deputy Prime Minister is across all these issues of housing.
Just on that, Prime Minister, every homeless child means a child missing school, a child missing out on a vital and welcome breakfast club that your government have committed to, a child or adult missing out on those extra hospital appointments because they don't have a safe and secure home to go to. We are seeing councils at breaking point because of the additional money spent on temporary accommodations. A number of councils declaring bankrupt because of temporary accommodation. This is not sustainable. And I come back to some of the measures that have been taken by the government. So just to ask, do you feel, Prime Minister, then, that we do need to have an urgent reset in local government funding to look at these long-term solutions and key pressures facing councils up and down the country? Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, let me say we have put £1 billion into homelessness. That is a huge amount, more than any government's put in for a very, very long time, for precisely the reasons that have been identified by this committee. So there's an absolute commitment on homelessness, and the money was put there in the budget and the spending review to make good on the commitment on homelessness. On the wider question of local authority funding, yes, I do think it needs a review. I've long thought it needs a review, amongst other things, we need multi-year settlements. There are no end of local authorities that say to me, because it's a year-on-year allocation of money, we can't use the money as effectively as we might otherwise be able to do. There are, I don't know how many local authorities who say to me, until you fix, as we are now doing, the no-fault eviction problem, you'll have a homelessness problem, and the bill will be picked up by local authorities. That's why we brought in the provisions to get rid of no-fault evictions. So I absolutely agree with you. This needs review, it needs change. We've started the process of change. And they would be, as it were, the top contenders that, for me, of what we're getting on with to bring about a material change as quickly as we can.
Okay, that's good. So it'll be good to know when we'll expect to see some of those changes and the extra investment, and if it's something that...
Well, the investment in homelessness has gone in already. I mean, the money's been made available.
When do you expect to see a change?
Well, as soon as possible. I've got the Deputy Prime Minister project managing this. We're looking across the numbers. We're getting the money to where it needs to be. But the financial commitment and the political commitment are in place, and the Deputy Prime Minister is pretty focused. It matters hugely to her, it matters hugely to me, and therefore we're driving it through central government.
I talked earlier about your vision in 3 years. I mean, you're saying in 3 years, in the next year, you'll see a difference. When do you think we'll see the actual difference on the ground? Because
in homelessness or living standards more generally?
Well, on this particular issue, on housing and home and temporary accommodation.
The money going into temporary accommodation, I want to see having immediate effect. In other words, more accommodation available. Now, obviously, it'll take some time to get it into place. But
where is this accommodation going to come from?
This isn't a delayed project. Well, in terms of what can be built, what can be arranged, what can be taken by councils and repurposed, is a central focus of what we're doing. But I'm impatient for this change to be driven through. There's no desire on government for this to take any longer than it needs to take to be done effectively and properly.
It's just that we've got Home Office bidding for homes for asylum seekers. We've got councils bidding for homes for homeless for the same properties.
Everyone's
driving up the price, driving up the cost.
I know,
from the government.
Which is why I'm so furious at the last government for leaving tens of thousands of asylum seekers unprocessed with nowhere to live other than accommodation paid for by the taxpayer.
Are you planning to build homes or put people into...
Well, we have to do a number of things. We do have to build, of course.
But that won't happen in the next year.
We have to take over other accommodation. We have to drive down the asylum lists. There is no
just a big pinpoint before. What other accommodation precisely are you planning to take over to provide temporary accommodation for families?
Oh, there's lots of housing in many local authorities that can be used, and we're identifying where it can be used. But I mean, look.
Could you give us? Have you got any examples you can give us?
No, but I'll write in and give you details.
Because I could say certainly in a number of our local authorities, already picking up from around the table, there isn't a lot of spare housing available. If there were, councils would be able to be dealing with it by now.
Yeah.